some of us don't want to see that kind of thing. All right, so let's talk about, so as I was talking to Ben here, Ben, Benjamin, does it matter? Good. As I was talking to Ben here, we brought up a couple of points that are nice to bring up at this time. With the whole COVID thing going on, this has been a real trying time for theaters all across the world, really, but definitely in the United States. For instance, Broadway has been closed down since March. They don't have any intention of opening until at least January at the earliest of next year. So they've been dark for 4 or 5 months.
Broadway, yeah.
Broadway is probably in the top 5 money-making businesses for New York City. So, for tourism purposes. That being said, museums are also closed, galleries are closed, all that kind of stuff. So the arts in general are having a trying time at this point. And it's not letting up yet. I know the governor is supposed to make an announcement here for North Carolina about possibly loosening some of the rules up today. What that means, I don't know, because they didn't mention that part. They just said that's what he's going to do. I don't think we're going to go into phase 3, which would allow some more things. But he may allow certain businesses like bowling alleys and gyms and stuff to open. But I don't know that it's going to allow theaters to open. And part of the problem with that is, even if the theaters could open to regular business, they're not going to be able to seat more than, say, 50 people max, 25 probably, because part of it's based on how much space you have, part of it's based on how many numbers they let you have anyway. So the problem is, some place like Cape Fear Regional Theater, the Gilbert Theater, they can't support what they do on 25 people a performance. It's just not possible without charging an arm and a leg, which is also not going to happen. So that becomes another issue. Even if they're allowed to open up slightly, it really doesn't open them up. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's going to be a good chance that a lot of smaller theaters will close. Now, the good thing is, some of these smaller theaters like the Gilbert, they have budgets based on different things. But since they haven't really got to spend any of their budget for doing shows, they should still have that money there to do. Now, that being said, they still have to pay rent, they still have to pay electric, that kind of stuff. So there are still expenses going out regardless of anything else. So they're just not generating any more money. So that's going to be an interesting thing. You know, movie theaters have the same problem too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months and see how many survive. But once things happen and they're able to start back, then you're going to see some of them start actually becoming bigger and better. So that's a good thing. So now, the other thing we're going to talk about, a couple things, is what do you do when you want to do a show?
In what sense?
Let's say we as a group of people, all 4 of us, 5, wanted to put on a production. And we were going to be the producers of it.
Are we talking about in line of COVID or just in general?
Just in general. So if we were going to produce this show, what's that mean? What's a producer's job?
It's to make sure everything is functional, that everything is set up, that the right people are involved, that there's adequate seating.
Nope.
No?
It's a good thought, but technically that's not their job. That would be either the artistic director or the business director, manager of the theater. So in theater, there's two sides to it. There's the or the artistic side, and then there's the business side to theater. All theaters are designed this way. So if you go to Cape Fear Regional Theater, you have an artistic director, and then you also have a business manager or a managing director or whatever they want to call it. Okay?
Yeah, where is it?
We don't know. We just go with what we have here. So, that being said, the artistic director, their job is to make sure the personnel is there for the shows. So if we're going to do a season of 5 shows, the artistic director picks those 5 shows with maybe other input, but definitely starts that out. Once those 5 shows are picked, that artistic director is going to hire directors to direct each performance. Now they, as the artistic director, may direct it themselves, one of them or several of them, but they're going to hire other people to come in and direct. Okay? Then they're going to make sure there's a stage manager for each show. They're going to make sure the cast and crew is available and provided for each show. Does that make sense? That's their job, to take care of the artistic side. Then on the business side, that person's job is to get the publicity out there, to get ads for the programs, to get the programs printed, to get tickets made, do all that kind of stuff, all the publicity, all the business side of everything. Boy, talk about annoying.
I know that chair, right?
Yeah.
What we talking about, Mr. J?
Business, theater business. So now there's a whole lot of other steps in between, but technically the producer, their job is to get the money. They provide, so for Cape Fear Regional Theater, the producers would be the Board of Trustees. Does that make sense? For us, the college itself is the producer. Now you could argue that I would be producers as department chair because I'm the one that says, here's the money, here's what we've got, here's how we divvy it up. I don't really say it, I just do it, but you know. So in that aspect, but then technically I would be the artistic director here because even though we don't use that title here, because I'm the one that handles all that stuff too. Who directs what shows and all that. So you're going to find that every theater is kind of different in how they handle those situations because it's going to be based on the size of the theater. Cape Fear Regional Theater is way bigger an organization than the Gilbert Theater in terms of personnel and budget. So Cape Fear Regional Theater, they'll have an artistic director, they'll have a business manager, they'll have several people in between all around. They'll have an artistic technical director of some sort per show, if not one person on staff. And then the Gilbert Theater is going to have an artistic director, an assistant artistic director, and maybe somebody that handles business other than just them, okay? Because they just don't have the budget for a lot of personnel because their budget comes in a little bit different way than Cape Fear's, partly because they haven't been around nearly as long and established. Not that they're not established, they just haven't been around as long. But also the way they structured it is different than Cape Fear Regionals on purpose, okay? Educational theater is totally different because we don't rely on the same kind of budget they do. We have a budget. We rely on a budget, but our budget is set by the state or the county or the, you know, whatever, the college. And then we're told this is what we have, we work with what we have. Much like what the artistic director or whoever at Cape Fear would do, this is what we're telling you what we have, this is what you have to work with. The difference is the money that they're getting is coming from different ways. Does that make sense? Because they're going to get it from grants, they're going to get it from donors or whatever. We don't get money from donors per se. We get it based on the fact that we have students here who want to do things, and then it goes and does all that, whatever. It gets divvied up, and we're just told this is how much we have, which is fine, it works out. There are some schools, unlike us, so here's the thing. We have a budget, That budget really hasn't changed much over the years since I've been here. Because it's a decent budget for what we need, okay? We don't have to pay rent on a space. We have a space. Now, we don't own this space, the theater department or the fine arts department, but we are the ones who are technically in charge of the space. So what that means is if somebody else on campus wants to use this space, they have the right to use it just like we do. But I reserve it out a year in advance so that we know that we have it for the times we need it. So what happens is somebody else wants to use it for something, they come to the people in charge of reserving it, who will then ask me about it and see if I can release it for that time. And usually I can, depend on whether it's a show going on or not. But if we have a show going on, within 2 weeks of that show, nobody else is coming in, except for the college president, because they can pretty much do whatever they want. That's the way it works. You don't knock the person who gives you the money. You know what I'm saying? So, and even then, it would just depend on what they needed to and what kind of setup we had. And we've done that many a times. We've had full sets up here, blocking entrances and whatever, changing things around, and had other people come in and want to use a projector screen or whatever. And either they set a portable screen up, because there is one that comes down, but if we have walls blocking that, they can't bring that down. So they either put a portable one up or whatever. So it has worked out that way before. And it all just depends on things. Right now, there's not a big need for this room because you can't get that many people in here anyway right now. Okay. But we don't have to pay rent. We don't have any of the expenses that most of these other theaters would have on a regular basis. So that's a big difference for us as opposed to some of these other places. Cape Fear Regional Theater, they're paying rent. I mean, even though they've been there for many years, I'm sure they may not have rent anymore because they've been there 50-something years. They may not have rent on that space anymore. They might. I don't know. It depends on whether they refinanced over the years or anything like that. But they're definitely paying electric bill and water bill and any other utilities they may have there. Again, ours is absorbed into the college, so it's no big deal. And a space like this, the electric bill alone would be pretty high. Especially once we turn the lights on, the stage lights. But with those LEDs that we got, that's going to help a little bit. And the water bill here would be fairly high, although just for the theater, probably not so bad. The Gilbert Theater is in a building. I know they pay rent because they don't own that building. And they would still be paying rent right now, even though they're not doing shows. Now, whether their landlord gave them a discount because nobody can really do anything, because that whole building's more or less shut down. I don't think that is Children's Union. They're not open, are they?
I know we have some stuff there, but none of them.
Yeah, nothing down there's open right now. So, who knows how that works. But if we wanted to put it on, so we're the producers, we're the ones getting the money. That means you have to divvy up some money. And a candy bar is not enough. You got to divvy up real bucks. No, I'm kidding. So where would we get our money? What's that?
Look for donors.
We could ask Dad for some money. No? Okay.
You could ask Dad for money. It's not likely to gonna happen because he'd laugh at you. But Ben said ask for donors, or look for donors. We can't legally take donations. The college could, but not really. The college has to do it through the foundation.
You can make
You can't do donations unless you're a 501c3 tax deductible.
You can make a partnership with another company that it would be willing to fund it, but it'd have to be worth their while. They'd have to
That would be called branding,
and they'd have
and that is a possibility.
they'd have to know how much marginal income they're going to get returned back to them for one, and how much
So you said a key word, marginal,
Mhm.
because that's really what it means. There's not gonna be any income coming in for a while,
Yeah.
okay? So here's the deal.
That's like if you were to hit up a school and be like, hey, can we use your location to film? They're gonna be like, well, what's in it for us? Because we have reasons for why you can't. You know, for somebody who's doing it for free, the only thing you could really say is, well, we can advertise for your school, and in the event this becomes something, we can offer you X amount %, but, you know, that's not gonna be enough to really get anywhere.
But see, schools can't really take money like that.
It's a nice incentive.
They can't do it though that way. Like if you were to say that to our school, they'd be like, you're not, you could blow it up on YouTube and be thousands of views. It's not gonna mean anything to us. Partly because of the way we're funded, we can't just take and create a partnership like that that brings in money. Because the money that, it's like this, the money that you guys pay for tuition does not go to our college. You pay it to us. We have to pay it to the state. The state then takes all the 58 community colleges, the money that comes through them, and divvies it up based on the number of students and all this other, there's a bunch of calculations that go in. So everything that you send us does not come to us, it goes to the state, and then they give us what we deserve or whatever they feel we deserve. It's not a bad system per se, it's just the way it is.
Right.
So all of the students that complain that you're just taking our money, no, we're not taking it, the state's taking it. But we're using what they give us to do what we have to do with it.
Well, the main
So we can't just create a partnership like that where you're gonna give us, or there's a potential shot of getting money.
Right. Well, I mean, the only reason why I suggested that is last year, last year I tried to launch a short film called A Dream Thus Far. And in that script, there was supposed to be a junkyard scene, right? And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ed's Auto Salvage off Slocum Road on Ramsey Street. I called them up and I said, hey, look, I've been on your facilities before buying parts. I found a good spot there that I'd like to film on. Is there any agreement we can come on or come to? Would you be willing to let me, you know, film for some free advertisement, et cetera, et cetera? And they were all for it. They didn't want any profit. They just wanted
Right,
to be
that's different.
Yeah, I know.
That's different.
The only reason why
A college, we have budget for publicity.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not, and it's not, it has nothing to do with you giving us free publicity or not. That's great, okay, no big deal. The problem is they have an image to represent, and they're gonna wanna know copious details about what you're doing to make sure that the image of the college is not misrepresented in anything that you do.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And you would have to sign a contract, and lawyers would be involved. It's just a crazy situation, and it's nothing to do with, it all has to do with making sure that the image of the college is, and I'm not talking about just our college, I'm talking about any college, any university is gonna have the same kind of situation. A private school can do something different, that's a whole nother thing, but public schools like us, public universities,
Yeah.
they're going to do what's best for the college. And the policy at our college is nobody's allowed to film on campus unless they're part of a class or work for the college in a way that requires that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Only because otherwise you're gonna have hundreds of people on campus filming all the time. And that's just uncontrollable. Does that make sense?
No, it does, actually, the more when you say that, because I mean, a lot of my cohorts that I've done film work with are always like, hey, let's try to get a campus, or let's try to get, you know, some awesome location that's free to the public to use, because, you know, production value, you know, I mean, if you can take advantage of something for free, most people are gonna do it. Let's say, for example, did you ever watch the movie Super 8?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, if not the whole thing.
It's an alien movie, but the whole beginning of the storyline is based on these kids who are trying to make a winning film festival production. You know, they want to make a horror film, and it's late at night. These kids are filming at a docking station for a train or subway, I guess you would call it in some places, and they're filming, and they're trying to take advantage of what they can. And there's this big train coming that they didn't expect was coming, and they're like, production value, and they're trying to get all their equipment together as quickly as possible so that way they can make the train as it's speeding by.
Right.
People want to take advantage of it all the time,
I mean, it makes sense. I'm just saying that there are legalities, even then shooting that train,
Yeah,
theoretically, if they showed any logos for that company that owns that train, they have to get permission.
well, luckily CSX is not really too.
I'm just saying that that's the way it works. It's
No,
just,
I understand, because we've taken advantage of stuff like that before.
I mean, you look at TV shows that have, it doesn't matter what TV show. If you look at TV show and there's a lot of cars in it, almost always you're gonna see a credit that says cars provided by Chevy Motor Company or something like that.
Yeah,
Because it's a branding thing. It's all, if you're gonna use cars, an identifiable type of car, they want their name on it. And it just makes sense.
right.
So, but anyway, because that's advertisement for them too.
So let me ask you this, for somebody who's doing a low budget, say they wanted to do like a 4-minute short film, let's say even for this class, for example, would we have to contact necessary individuals, or would we have to limit those being in there for legal reasons?
What do you mean?
Well, I know that's like a
Who?
loaded question. And it's
Contact
probably-
who for what?
I don't know, like depending on whatever you're using for the video for this class. I mean, if you're not making anything off of it, then does it matter? That's basically what I'm asking. If you're not making a profit off of a film production, do you still have to contact the individual should you catch
Yes.
the logo or something? All right, how do you go about doing that? And in the event, I assume in the event that they don't allow you to use it, you obviously can't use it, so you have to find an alternative. But
Just don't put a logo on. It's just like wearing clothes, like you're wearing a shirt that has a little logo on it.
oh yeah, echo.
Yeah. Either cover the logo, cut the logo off, or not show it up close.
I think I'm just thinking.
Just like his, Marvel. Marvel's notorious about copyright. Now even more so because they're owned by Disney. And Disney just does not forget that. So what you would have to do is he would have to cover his shirt up. He'd have to either take the shirt out and change it with something else, or turn it inside out, or shut his sweater up so that he can't see that. Because if we were filming him, you can't have that. She's got a pattern on hers. See, she's got hers covered up, so we're good. You just covered. But all that's fine and dandy. Even though this shirt may only be designed like that by that company, it doesn't matter as long as we don't see the logo. That's the primary thing. And it's the same thing on stage, technically speaking, although most people don't care on stage because you're not going to be able to see a logo from the stage very easily. Marvel, something like that, yes, you're going to be able to see that, so that's identifiable. But that's, you know, it better fit the character. And again, that goes into a whole other things. But the bottom line is, if you're going to film, then you got to get permission from wherever you're at. If you're going to do a play somewhere other than in a designated theater, same thing, you still have to get permission, even if you're not paying rent for it. You have to get permission to use that space for the time. And if you're going to, let's say we wanted to use Festival Park to do a play. It's a big enough spot, right? There is a kind of a stage area there already. The thing is, the city or whoever controls it, maybe county, I think it's the city. If they could say, okay, that's fine, but they're not going to just say that. They're going to say, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How long are you going to be there? What is going to go up? Because if we're doing a play, there's probably going to be a set involved. That set's just not going to go up like that and go down like that. It's going to take a while, a few hours minimum to put it up probably and get it secured, and then about the same amount to take it down afterwards. So that's added into the amount of time we're going to be there. If we're going to do more than one performance, that needs to be determined. There's not, you've seen these a lot of times, the theaters where they have extended performances. That's great if you have your own space and you control it. But if you don't control the space, you've got to arrange for that beforehand. Because if we were doing a play down at Festival Park and it was a big hit and people just kept coming, we can't just extend it out and say, hey, we're going to do another weekend. They're going to like, no, we got a concert next weekend, forget it. There's nothing we can do about that. All we can do is then find another location and tell everybody we're going to continue this elsewhere. And that Sweet Tea Shakespeare, that's the kind of thing they have to do a lot of times. because they don't have a designated space. They have to find a place. So if they're going to do more than a week or 2 weeks, they're lucky if one place will give them 2 weeks in a row. Otherwise, they got several performances here, and then they're going to move over to here to do it. Okay, that's the disadvantage to that kind of theater. So, getting back to our budgeting part of it, donations we can't do unless we're a tax deductible company, tax-free company, which we're not set up. It would take about a year to get the paperwork all set up and done right and approved and all that stuff. And they're not going to do it because we don't even have a business plan. We'd have all that stuff to create. Getting Dad to do it, maybe. Getting branding, chances are a company's not going to, any legitimate company is not going to give us any money for that kind of thing because we don't exist. If we existed and had a history of success, then that's where the money would come in. Does that make sense? Now, if by chance somebody had a relative or real close friend that was a manager of a company that did that kind of thing, we might could get a one-time deal from them. But a lot of places aren't going to give money because they're looking for tax donations. They're looking, so if I give $500 to you, I want to be able to write that off of my taxes and get some of that back. Even as a corporation, that's the way it works. So that's the downfall. That's why most theaters in the United States are nonprofit organizations, because then I can go to a company like Walmart and say, hey, we're doing some plays, is there anything you can do? Walmart has a plan, I assume they still do it, where every quarter, so 4 times a year, you can apply for like a $500 grant, so to speak, for doing certain things when inside the community. So that's $2,000. That's not a bad little deal if you can get it every time. So that might be, and a lot of people don't know about it. So that might be a place to get something. Food Lion is probably the same way. Some of these Target and all these other companies are probably, and we're talking, even though it's corporate, we're talking each individual store has the ability to do that usually. Not the one on Skybo though, because that one's a problem. I'm kidding.
Honestly, everything about that one is messed up.
Yeah,
I used
it
to
got
work
messed
in
up, there's no doubt. Anyway, so if we're gonna be the producers, chances are it's coming out of our own pockets.
Yeah.
So now we gotta determine how much money do we need to put on a play. Now keep in mind, we have no place to do this at, we have no supplies, we don't have flats already available, we don't have any props per se, costumes, we don't have any of that because we're not an established organization already. So we're just starting out with an idea.
Well, if I understand correctly, Gilbert Theater started out of some dude's backyard in the literal.
Started out in his basement originally.
Yeah, okay. So,
And that's not undoable, except technically you can't do that today. He might not have been able to do it then, legally, because your houses are not zoned commercial.
but can they stop you for doing a protection outside? If so, maybe you might know somebody who has a small acre of land you can take advantage of, or either.
Hold on, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he did it wrong. I'm just saying that technically your houses are zoned residential. They're not zoned for commercial sales. And that's when you put a theater in your house, that becomes a commercial entity. You're there to make money.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that he did it as a nonprofit, and I don't know if he had the paperwork for that before he did it, before the first performance or not, I don't know, because that was before my
It's the
time.
same reason why you have to have like an agreement or something with the city before you do a yard sale, I think.
Yeah, it depends on each city's different, so,
Yeah.
yeah. But either way, and again, he probably went through the right channels because he was a businessman, so he knew. So he probably went through the right channels and got it done right. It's just a matter of, you can't just do that.
Right.
even though some of us would like to. Now, there are some legalities that says that we could do a performance. People can donate as they come in. Meaning, you gave us some money even though we didn't charge admission. There are some, gray areas there. Now, it's not a true donation because they can't write it off on their taxes or anything. So it's basically, they just gave us the money. So, I mean, that's a possibility. But if the person lives outside of town, or if their land's not residential, but agricultural or commercial, that's a whole nother issue. Because there's certain things you can do on commercial property that you can't do on residential without going through a bunch of garbage. And then agricultural has even more leeway on certain things than other things. It's just crazy. And it all depends on where you live and what the city and county and state and all that stuff, all the laws are and all. But fortunately, most people aren't starting a theater like that anyway. Otherwise, it would be really weird. Now, if we wanted to do it, the first thing we got to do is what? Determine what?
Location? What show we want to do?
Not necessarily location. A show would be a good idea. Because location may be determined by what kind of show it is. If we're going to have a different location per show, so we need to start with something. A show is a good place to start. Why?
If you're doing a show like a large musical, you want a larger space than
So if you're doing a large musical, you need to make sure the space is large enough. If you're doing a large musical, that means you need to know, that you're going to have more expenses, which means the budget needs to be a little bit bigger to start with. So chances are, us in here, that now has 6 or 7 of us, we're not going to start with a large musical. Why? There's not enough of us to back it up. Even if we had lots of money, you don't necessarily, if you're going to start a theater, typically the people involved in the productions, the producers, usually are involved, probably as actors or whatever. That means we're not going to do a large musical when there's only 6 of us. We could maybe do a small musical, if we can find a small musical. There's a couple, but whether we fit. Actually, we could do. You 3 girls sing? No.
That's it, yeah.
One of you?
2 more people.
I guess we can't do nonsense then.
Traffic.
Unless 2 or more of you can sing, then
I
said so.
sing in the shower.
Not you. You can't do it.
Oh.
You're a guy.
Oh.
Don't know what use the makeup.
I've been told.
Well, we could. Well, maybe shave his legs.
I've been told I look good in the dress, but it's all good.
Just put on some drag.
Somebody would complain.
Oh, yeah. Most
Trust
people
me.
don't.
Today, somebody would complain. But anyway, there are some small musicals. Theoretically, we have enough people to do something like Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. And the advantage to doing that is now it's a children's show, which means bigger audiences per se. Bigger audiences means more money brought in at the box office. Does that make sense? But musicals cost more. So we're probably not going to do a musical because we want to save as much money up front as possible, right? So if we decide on a show, what kind of show we're going to do? Drama, tragedy, comedy, farce, melodrama, tragicomedy.
I'd have to say drama. I feel like it'd be cheaper. So,
Then what?
cheaper than what? Well, you said definitely cheaper than a musical.
Why would a drama be cheaper than, say, a comedy?
Because you can use, pretty much the most basic stereotypical setup than anything. I mean,
You can
it
do that
doesn't-
on any of these.
Well, yeah, but at least like if you're trying to do musicals, you're trying to do something.
I
like
didn't say
action-based.
musical. I said a comedy, drama, tragedy.
No, I heard you. But if
Yeah.
you're trying to do something that's musical or action-based or something that's going to be exceptionally extravagant.
Okay, hold on. You're throwing different terms in there that don't really apply to this. Here's why. Musical, action, those are subgenres. Does
Okay.
that make sense? There's only 7 true genres, 6 true genres.
We're talking theater specifically then.
I'm talking theater or film, it doesn't matter. There's only true genres. Comedy, drama, tragedy, melodrama, farce, tragic comedy. These are it. These 6. Doesn't matter what genre, whether it's novels, whether, if you're talking about storytelling, that's it. Those are the 6. Period. Okay? When you're talking about an action film, that's a subgenre, because the action film is either going to be a comedy or a tragedy or a drama. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The Last Action Hero is an action comedy, right? As opposed to Ransom, which is an action drama. Does that make sense?
No,
The drama is the important part. The comedy is the important part. That's the genre. All these others are subgenre. A musical could be a musical comedy, could be a tragedy, could be an opera, which would be a tragedy, but it's a form of musical.
Yeah, I just never stopped to think.
Most people don't. That's why I always have to bring these in, because there's only 6 true genres for storytelling. Whether you're talking about a novel, whether you're talking about a play or a film, it doesn't matter, TV show. Those are the 6. Everything else is a subgenre. So if you go to a movie store, if you could still find one, that has the DVDs or whatever, Best Buy still has some, I think. You go in there, they're going to have all these genres. They're actually subgenres, okay? Because you could fit them into these 6 categories. Does that make sense to everybody? Those are the important ones. Everything after that is just something to subcategorize it so that it's narrowing down the field. Got it? Which is a good thing. That's important to know. But the biggest difference between a comedy and a drama is the way in which it's portrayed, not the materials that are used to create it, per se. Does that make sense? For us, as producers, if we were going to do it, the only difference between doing not a musical, but doing a comedy or drama would be 2 things. One, the way in which we approach it, and what's it going to do for the base of our show, for our audience. Which one's going to bring in more audience? Does that make sense? And for us, as producers, that's the bottom line. That's what we really care about. Are we going to do a comedy, drama, tragedy, melodrama, farce, or comedy, tragedy? Which one's going to bring in the biggest audience? Which one do you feel would bring the biggest audience?
Let's put a genre, probably comedy.
I'm still gonna say drama, because everybody likes, gossip.
Your 2 biggest options are going to be drama or comedy. Tragedy is a limited audience because, like right now, a tragedy today with what's going on around us, probably not going to be a good thing because people are not wanting to be depressed. They're already feeling that way. They don't need more of that. So comedy or drama is our best option. But even then, at this moment, probably comedy is going to be your better bet because your audience is going to feel more uplifted afterwards. Because even with the drama, that's more like true to life kind of stuff. There could be some humor in it, but it's not designed to be humorous.
We got some comedic, some drama and comedy in the same movie too. So.
You can, and the best shows will have a combination of that. The problem is if it's considered a drama, there's probably some serious things going on that, again, an audience today with everything that's going on, it's not that they don't want drama, they're going to be looking towards comedy as a relief more so. Does that make sense? But our best 2 options would be drama or comedy at this point.
And some are just, I don't know, this generation today is weird, but they're getting
That part.
sensitive even with the comedy. They're so sensitive, a lot of shows.
Well, there's no
cancel
doubt
because of
that-
comedy, because they're so sensitive. Like, shut up, you don't like it, turn the tape to this station. I don't get that, but.
But see, that's part of the thing. Now, as a theater, oftentimes what you're going to find most theaters, what they're going to tell you, because they're nonprofit organizations, it makes it a little bit different most of the time. What they're going to say is, part of our goal is to educate the audience. So as a theater, if we know that the audience is very sensitive about issues, then maybe we're gonna try to find a play that talks about these issues, that gives them an education so that they don't feel as sensitive about some of this, because now they've seen it in what we would consider the best light.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
For instance, a very controversial show could be, for this audience, To Kill a Mockingbird. Wouldn't you agree? It has to do with race relations, but it's done in a way that's really relevant and works. But it could be very sensitive to some people in today's society. So if it's not portrayed correctly, and part of that would have to do with the casting and the directing. Does that make sense? The script is already written out, so that's easy. But if you cast the wrong person and they play Atticus Finch, the hero of it, if he's played as a goofball or a country bumpkin or something stupid, that's not going to work, because he has to be more or less the voice of reason. Does that make sense to everybody? Same thing with the couple of the other main characters. If they're played in the wrong way, then you change the whole dynamic of the play. So they all have to fit in just right and work the way it was designed to. And it boils down to this: if the audience does not have empathy for the characters, forget it. Right? Yeah. Because you could play To Kill a Mockingbird as a comedy. It's not a comedy. There is some humorous bits in it if it's played right, but there's small bits that just relieve the drama a little bit to make it more realistic and better. Okay. Same thing with 12 Angry Jurors. Very much, it's not dealing with race issues per se, but it could be, depends how you cast it. So, I mean, there's all kinds of different things you have to look at in those things. But knowing your audience would be a big key to this. If you know what your audience is like and you know that they're very sensitive to certain issues, either avoid those issues completely if you can, or make sure you're putting them in as a good a light as you can so that there's not mixed information coming out.
Yeah, I was thinking about, they did a special on Netflix. It was Dave Chappelle did stand-up comedy, and so many people took offense to what he was saying.
But
They
Dave
tried-
Chappelle has been known for the last 10 years or so to be very controversial.
Exactly.
And that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
If you already have that reputation, then that's going to precede what you're doing.
Netflix still played it, he didn't care. I was
Yeah.
just saying they were trying to ban him off the Netflix and it didn't work. But it's just like, if you don't like it, don't watch it, that's all I'm saying.
I think a lot of people have a hard time, like, laughing at things that they're against morally, you know? Like, I can think something's funny and not agree with it morally, but a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, I've known
So,
that.
like, some of the transphobic stuff that he said, like,
Mhm.
I'm very, like, supportive of the LGBT community, but I can still find those things funny,
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. It's just all in fun.
Right, because you come from a different background or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, some of those issues can be very sensitive.
I mean, obviously his audience liked it, you know, who he was talking to, but then when they made it, you know, put it everywhere, you know, on TV, a lot of people didn't like it, but obviously his audience liked it at the time.
I met Dave
He knew his
Shapiro.
audience, it's just when it went abroad.
I met him it was just before he started the Dave Shapiro show way back.
Mhm.
He was doing the college circuit. He came to our community college and performed. And this was a podunk community college in the middle of Kansas that he was a shocking element to. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just, these guys weren't used to that kind of raw,
Yeah.
whatever,
When you grow up
high energy
like,
comedian.
He's different. You grew up like I grew up, stuff like that. We used to that. That's nothing new. But I
No, it's not that
understand.
people didn't know about it and you didn't see it, you could see it on TV or whatever else.
Yeah.
But at live events in Kansas like that, Southwest Kansas,
Yeah.
they didn't have that kind of thing happen there. And it was, I mean, he did a good show, it wasn't that. But But that was before he became famous for doing
Mm,
his other stuff, but,
yeah. I just don't believe in the cancel culture. They're just trying to cancel everything. So if you,
yeah.
so, you know, everybody's just sensitive. They're offended by everything.
So we've got,
You know?
we've got several things, and again, starting a theater, this is something you have to be aware of. There's several things that can work for you or against you. One is 24-hour news channels. Now, for us, starting a theater, they're not gonna care. We're not gonna have anything to do with that. Can the news be a use for you? Yes. Are you likely to get the news to come talk to you? Probably not. Now, if you can find an angle where they will come, and I'm not just talking about the news TV, I'm talking about the radio, newspapers, those kind of things. Because for instance, there's 2 newspapers in town, right? You know what they are? Nobody knows what they are.
Fayetteville Observer.
Fayetteville Observer,
That's on my phone.
And
Up and Coming. Those are the 2 more or less main ones. There's City View magazine or something as well, but it's, you know, that's what, once a month or something? I don't know. But anyway, the Up and Coming and Fayetteville Observer. Neither one of them will provide content about our plays. They will Cape Fear Regional or the Gilbert.
Yeah.
They'll come and talk to them, do interviews and all that stuff. They will not for us unless there's some kind of community aspect to it or something different. Because according to them, they don't cover college productions. And I'm like, why not? There's only 3 of us in town. So it's not like, I mean, you have us, Cape Fear, us, Fayetteville State, and Methodist. We're it. There is nothing else
Nope.
college-wise. In theaters in town, there's only 2 besides the 3 of our college ones. So there's only 5 theaters total in town. 6 if you count Sweet Tea, which is kind of associated with Fayetteville State in a way, not really. They started out that way, they're more separate now. So there's only 6 theaters, why can't you cover all 6? It's not like there's a lot going on. You know what I'm saying? If you're a daily paper or a weekly paper, there's plenty of news from 6, you know what I'm saying? Again, that's their deal, whatever. We had been in there a couple of times because one time we had a grandfather, son, and grandson all in one production. So they put that in because that was a cool spin on 3 generations. In fact, it was the one your mom was in, Fiddler. Did they? Was it Fiddler? I think it was Fiddler that they did the thing with the Eames family. But we had several things because you had your mom and your daughter, Laurel was in there, so the mom and daughter, and then we had some other family people. I mean, that was a big family show. By the way, Fiddler on the Roof, musical, it's a drama, has some comedy in it. We did that in this space with over 50 people in the cast.
I saw that one.
You saw that one here? That long ago?
Yes.
Was you like knee-high to a grasshopper?
Yeah, my dad took us to see
What was that, like 12 years? 13, 12, 12, 10, 11? It was a long time ago. Yeah, we did. It was a good show. It went well. I directed it. That's not the only reason it went well. We had a good cast.
You didn't take it?
I think there's video of it somewhere. I'm sure there is somewhere. We have lots of photos. I know that much. But that was one of those, everything kind of came together and worked well. All right, so we're back to our budget. You guys keep getting me onto these other things, which is all part of it, so that's good. But back to our budget. So we're going to start with a show, and we're going to do either comedy or drama. Which one do we think is going to be better?
Comedy.
Yeah, I think comedy.
Comedy?
Environment.
Everybody agree, except for you?
Yeah, except for me.
Okay, well, we're going to ignore you for the moment.
That's okay.
Well, don't worry, we won't ignore you later.
It's okay.
Well, maybe we will. We'll see.
Everyone doesn't need this.
Yeah. So let's just say comedy. What kind of comedy are we looking at?
Ever seen Click by Adam
Yeah, that's not gonna happen on stage. Could try, not likely. Because now we're gonna have to have special effects and that's gonna increase our budget. Again, part of our job is we want something that's gonna play well for an audience, to get a good audience in, but it's not gonna cost us an arm and a leg to put together.
I'd say Heather's, but that one might be costly.
That's a musical too, yeah. For stage, it's a musical,
Yeah.
yeah. We wanna keep the cast small,
Okay.
because whether we pay the actors or not, it's a whole nother issue. Because if we're gonna pay them, we definitely want a small cast.
What about the abridged Shakespeare?
The complete works of William
Yeah,
Shakespeare
yeah.
Bridge,
The abridged version, just like three dudes on stage.
three actors.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
I mean, it's pure satire. the
And
entire group.
not only that, it's a high-paced, fast comedy. It makes fun of, more or less, a satire on Shakespeare. So if you're not into Shakespeare, that's okay, because they're not really doing Shakespeare. And then it only takes 3 actors, because you got 2 actors and then one doing all the other, unless you break it up different ways. And it does not take a whole lot of set or costumes, because it can be done on a bare stage for the most part.
Mhm.
So that's a doable show. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
The only problem you're gonna have with it is most audience don't know it. General audience wouldn't know it. And even though it's not Shakespeare, it has Shakespeare in it, which could be a turn on or turn off for audience. You see what I'm saying? The people thought, oh, this is Shakespeare, and they get here, this isn't Shakespeare the way I remember hearing about it.
Well, I
Right.
mean, it's literally in the name though, bridge. Well, most people probably don't know what that means, so that's fair.
Right. Now, you could do something with the poster design or, publicity to kind of give an idea of what it's like.
Shakespeare,
And that may
but
help.
not Shakespeare.
You could say that. You want to experience Shakespeare without experiencing Shakespeare? There you go. I mean, it's still going to be one of those things. Who knows? It's not to say that that's not a good choice. I'm just telling you, these are things that, if you're thinking about money, these are things you got to bring up early on to decide whether this is the right choice or not. Here's the thing you're going to find out in theater. Most people, general public, don't know any theater. I could name several playwrights, and I bet you half of you couldn't name who they are, or even one play by them. You ready? I'm going to test you out. I'll start with some easy ones. Arthur Miller.
Death of the Salesman.
Anybody else know of a play?
Did you do All My Sons?
All My Sons?
The Iceman Comic.
No.
Oh, it's not.
No. You jumped ahead of yourself. No, but you already got one, so you're okay. All right, so Arthur Miller's an easy one. All My Sons, Death of the Salesman, After the Fall. Come on, The Crucible. Come on, guys.
Okay, I seen the fruit.
I'm not a theater kid.
These are plays that were read in English classes throughout school, all school people. All right, here's another easy one. Neil Simon.
I know that name, I don't know.
Come on,
Is that the Odd Couple?
The Odd Couple.
Next.
The Odd Couple,
The Couple, Part 2.
Barefoot in the Park. He did The Odd Couple Part 2, yes. Barefoot in the Park. Sunshine Boys.
I know.
I think Barefoot in the Park.
Don't give us a test, we'll fail. I'll fail.
Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. What up, homie G? You looking for somebody? Is he not here yet?
Yeah, I was just thinking.
He's not in here yet.
Okay.
Just let me know. So those are easy ones. Now we'll go into some harder ones. Harold Pinner. He does more absurd type plays. how about name? Eugene O'Neill.
I know the name,
You-
is
you-
that Iceman coming?
Iceman Cometh.
That's why I get the name.
Morning Becomes Electra. Come on, people, you're theater people, right? Okay. You guys are in theater and you don't know these. So how would you expect an audience, a general population to know these? You see what I'm saying?
A lot of times
William Inge.
the title of the play sticks out to you a lot more than like the playwright, you know?
Yeah.
So give me a play.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Are not dead.
Are not dead?
That's the name of it. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are not dead. By
Tom
Tom
Stoppard.
Stoppard.
Maybe
It
he
is
did
art.
musicals or
Hmm?
not.
It is art.
Do what now?
Maybe
Musicals?
he said some musicals, you might know. I don't know.
Well, people are going to see musicals because, all right, typically in general, and again, this is not a one-size-fits-all works. Typically, the shows that bring in the most people, children's musicals. Children's shows, musicals, comedies, dramas, they're kind of right there together. And then the others fall down through it. Children's shows with musicals, because now you got kids in a cast. If you got a large cast children's show, everybody comes to see it.
That's for some number.
Why do you think Cape Fear Regional does a children's musical Christmas show every year?
Brings in everybody.
Because it brings in their budget for the rest of the year. Because if I have 300 kids cast in a show because they do different shows, different casts, different nights, Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which is one of the dumbest shows in the world. I mean, has anybody seen it, read it? You've been in it? Am I right? It's not really a good
It's
show.
stupid.
It's a children's show that's not even a good children's show, but it's okay.
It's like fun, man.
But it brings in an audience.
It's fun, it's got kids and they've been doing it
Yeah.
for years, so everyone knows it. The families.
But you cast 12 different casts of 10 kids or more, because you could have a whole ensemble of kids in each one. And then their parents, their brothers and sisters, their uncles, their aunts, their grandparents, their friends, their teachers, all of them are coming to the show. And that thing's going to sell out every performance, because that's the money maker. Right? Now they've changed it around. They're not doing Christmas pageant anymore. They're doing another one.
Yeah, I know everything about this year being the last year, but they haven't like officially announced anything about that.
The Gilbert, on the other hand, does
It's wonderful.
It's a Wonderful Life or A Christmas Carol. Both well-known shows that bring in an audience and are family friendly. So therefore, that's their money-making show. It's guaranteed to bring in an audience, to get money in the seats, which then gives us money for the next 2 or 3 shows.
They can reuse props and costumes, which means less budget on that.
Yeah, and if you're doing it every year, you've got all the materials you need. And once you've done it the first time, save everything, do it again the next year. Just a few things you have to replace or adjust or whatever. So it makes sense. And again, that's the kind of thing, if we were doing this as a thing, as more than one show, we would want to create a whole season. And that's the kind of things we'd look at.
Need to take a bathroom break.
Go for it. But does that make sense to everybody? That's the kind of thing we would be looking at, because if we've got to have a whole season, we want to make sure somewhere towards the middle we're bringing in an audience regardless of anything else. Now, us just getting started, we're probably just going to try to start with the one show and see what happens before we start considering a whole season. Only because that one show could make or break us. You pick the wrong show to start with, it doesn't matter what the other 4 are. You see what I'm saying? But if you do one show to see, kind of test the waters, if it goes over well and is done well and the audience perceives it well, Now it's gonna be much easier to go ahead and do a whole season. Right? So timing of the year might be a good time to start is like now. Although right now, because of what's going on, no. But at this time of the year, it might be a good time to do a test the waters. And actually, if I was gonna start at this time of year, we probably would want to look at a Christmas-related show. Because now, guess what? Not only are we doing a Christmas comedy, non-musical, but that means because it's Christmas-related, better chance of getting people in. Doesn't that make sense? Because come November, especially after Thanksgiving, that's what everybody's looking for. Christmas-related entertainment, right? How many of you have gone to one of those shows like the Christmas Bells or Jingle Bells or Disney on Ice or something stupid? You guys don't go to anything? How many of you went to see the lights somewhere? Christmas lights? Ben's been in the Christmas shows every year, so he had no excuse. But you see my point. It's a Christmas-related thing. It's going to bring in an audience. That's going to help. So if we were going to do a Christmas comedy, what would be a good one? Can you think of one? Small cast.
Santaland Diaries.
What's that?
The Santaland Diaries. It's one person cast comedy.
One person cast is probably not going to help us, though. It's not a bad idea. It's just we don't have a draw on getting an audience if it's just one person. Depending on who that person is. Now, if that person has like 7 kids and 30 grandkids, that's different because they're all coming. But you see my point. It's not. We probably need 5 to 10 people in the cast to make it better. They don't have to be kids, although that could be something.
Christmas Carol or John?
Christmas Carol is going to have more people than 10. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to consider. Now, keeping in mind Christmas Carol. It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas Carol, Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Those are decent shows to do for the fact that they will bring an audience. The problem is you got to look around at what's around you. If we were going to put on a play here, a Christmas play in Fayetteville, you can guarantee that one of those 3, if not all 3, are going to be performed by other theaters in the right area. You don't want to do a Christmas Carol if Gilbert's doing it. You don't want to do It's a Wonderful Life if Cape Fear is doing it or whoever. Do you see what I'm saying? Because now you're causing problems with them. They're not going to like you. They're not going to like you anyway, but they're definitely not going to like you when you're doing the same show they're doing. Especially if yours is cheaper to go to. Even if it's not as good, doesn't matter. If yours is cheaper, they're going to be like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about the Christmas shows. in general.
There's a bunch of Christmas shows. It's just a matter of whether you find the right one or not. Typically speaking, those are the 3 done mostly around here all the time.
Charlie Brown Christmas, right?
There's a Charlie Brown, but that's a musical. No.
Dee Snider's Rock and Roll Christmas Tale.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
I like Dee Snider.
That would definitely be a musical. Not necessarily a good one.
He has that radio show. It's like hair metal radio show.
So here's another question. Should we pick a show or should we write our own?
Oh, God.
If it's a Christmas one, probably right on. I don't know any of them.
It's such a pain in the butt to like, I don't know, I feel like when I was in high school, we wrote all of our own productions because we were poor, you know? The school, there was no funding for the theater department.
Yeah.
And some of them were really, really good. We ended up spoofing a lot of stuff. Like we spoofed The Village and we spoofed Mean Girls. But because we were like.
Because those are easy to spoof.
Yeah, but because we were doing it ourselves, there were things that
Yeah, you don't want that on stage,
So
as much
stuff
as
like
possible.
that, it's just such a pain. Or maybe I just have like a bad taste in my mouth from it because we never got to do like a real show.
Now, if your teacher had looked, there's plenty of free productions out there. Not necessarily good, but there are plenty of free productions out there that could be done.
Yeah, I don't know. I
There's
don't know.
public domain, then there's some that people just, give me credit for it, and I don't care. But, I mean, like Importance of Being Earnest, that's a public domain play. It's a great script. And it only calls for 7, 8, 9 people.
Yeah,
Something
well,
like
I
that.
think that a lot of it was,
In fact, it would be a great play for somebody that's starting a theater out that wants a comedy that does not require a lot of people. The only problem with it is set in late 1800s, early 1900s, so there's costumes and set pieces. But what if you did a modern version of it? What if you adapted it to a country show, Southern? Would it work?
You might.
Why wouldn't it work?
Only one way to find out.
I mean, the only way to find out is to write it. And all you gotta do is take the dialogue that's there and make it into a country sounding dialogue. Some of the lines already go along with it. For instance, they're having the muffins. We eat muffins in the South, right? That's not a problem. Little finger sandwiches or whatever. We may not call them finger sandwiches, but we could call them something. They have cucumber sandwiches. I think that's the one of them. Now, we may not have cucumber sandwiches, but we'd have some kind of sandwich. Sandwich. You see what I'm saying? Some of it could be done, and it probably would be done well. You can't steal my idea. I got to do this first. But why couldn't it be done as a American Southern show? The concept of the show is pretty simple. It could be done anywhere. It's just about not knowing who's who. So that would be a simple. I think we're going to have to do that now. That could be my project.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
The real importance of being earnest. Yeah, put the t at the end, Southern. Every line has to have a twang in it. That's how we get music like that. I've got it on video now that we're going to do that. My idea. It's probably been done somewhere like that. All right, let's take a break. That way when Chris gets back, he'll